and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Well, we see a strong, formidable and convincing Pakatan Harapan at the starting blocks of GE15. Well, the opposition's internal infighting and pattern of airing differences in public have reinforced views that the coalition is unfocused and without a clear strategy to recapture Putrajaya. Can Pakatan Harapan present a united front and collaborate well with their electoral allies? Well, joining me tonight to take a good hard look at the coalition's prospects and challenges, and more importantly, its strategy going into GA15, we have Liew Chin Tong. He is the National Election Director for DAP and Opposition Leader for Johor State Assembly. He has also served as the Deputy Minister of Defence from July 2018 to February 2020. Chin Tong, thank you for being on the show with me tonight. There are those who have voted for Pakatan Harapan in 2018 who now want to know what is different about the coalition's vision and narrative going into these general elections beyond just the tagline of "Don't vote for UMNO."
I think this is very important. This election, it is very clear that the other side, you are going to get Zahid and the court cluster. So I think that is crystal clear, and UMNO has helped us to shape a very clear narrative. On that side, it is clear that they are unrepented and they are unreformed. The question now is whether we can present to the public that there is a future with Pakatan. And I think during the election, we must come back to a few key major issues. Number one, how to build a better economic life for ordinary Malaysians. That means an economic life that will actually help everyone lift all boats. I think that is a very crucial and important point. Without addressing the economic questions, our messages will not resonate with ordinary people. Especially post-pandemic, people are concerned about the economy. Secondly, I think we'll still have to come back to this point of democracy. We are here to build a democracy. We are not here to return to the one-party state. What UMNO wants is basically stability through one-party state. And we must explain to the public, in a democracy, we will have differences. We must find consensus through parliament. And if we do not have a consensus, then at least we have a process that protects the minority but allows the majority to rule, yet ensuring that no one is oppressed. Thirdly, I think ultimately, the identity questions will still come back. Can we actually build somehow a Malaysian identity where everyone or majority of people will feel assured and not feel that they have to go back to their cocoon, different racial or religious cocoon? That whole idea of having a national identity and articulating a Malaysian identity that encompasses racial line, I think is still a very important point for Pakatan to work on. So whether we can convince the public that these are the key tenets of a new government, we will be put to test in the next 30 days. Most likely, election will happen within 30 days.
Chin Tong, these are big questions to answer, big narratives to put out in 30 days. It sounds like Pakatan yourselves haven't actually quite come to terms or have a good grasp on answering these questions that you yourself put forward. How are you going to articulate these big questions, big narrative, big messages to the public to convince them that you are worth their vote?
I think in election, it is about contrast. In election, is really about contrast. If you have a clear mind frame, once you have a clear mind frame, then you work on the contrast. We are not electing angels, and we must admit that we are not perfect. In an election, we are not. The voters are not voting for gods. They are voting for human beings. They are voting for human being that comes together to form a coalition, to form. So we must not sell ourselves as perfect individuals. We are not perfect, but we are well intentioned, and we have some vision that is the right at the right time for this nation. So I think we must eventually electoral messages will boil down to contrast, and the contrast sometimes I think UMNO helps us in many ways in this round with Zahid as the face of election. So you know that with Zahid, it is basically court cluster, it is basically about corruption, and so that part is clear. So we must contrast that. And we must also contrast that our economic policy is for ordinary people, not for cronies. We must contrast that we are here to build a democracy and not to return to the one-party state. Because to Zahid and co, Malaysia, the best era of Malaysia was Najib's time. So we must contrast that we are different from them. So eventually, if we can work out the contrast, then the voters will see, okay, we're choosing between two groups of individuals, and these are the contrasts. And we are not electing gods. We are electing human beings. We know that they are not perfect, but we choose them for what they are, who they are, and what they stand for.
Okay, so the message is really in presenting these contrasts, these juxtapositions. Yeah. Okay, I would like to move.
The challenge for all of us is that many of us is still stuck in this idea that okay, we just go on a negative campaign. But actually, mind you, in 2018, it was not just a negative campaign. There was also a positive campaign, which is built on hope. Hope for what? It was not clear, but at least there was a positive part of it. In the 2018 campaign, it was not only a negative campaign against Najib, but there was also strong element of positive campaign for a better Malaysia. So that part has to come out. And I think this election, it cannot just be about negative campaign. It must be about positive campaign. And it must be a participatory campaign where ordinary Malaysians feel that they have a stake in our campaign, and eventually they feel that they have a stake in our government.
That's so interesting, particularly as many commentators have pointed to very weak sentiment among voters, the fact that many are disheartened and have lost that hope that you point to. How will you counter that?
I think it is never easy. It's never easy because for our opponents, they know that there are certain segments of the society who will not vote for them. So the campaign is to basically plant cynicism, to further apathy among those communities so that they don't come out to vote. So there are many people who are going to tell you that voting has no meaning. There is no hope in this country. Better forget about elections, forget about anything, because they will come back, they will rule with a two-thirds majority. And we fought against that in 2016, 2017, and eventually we won in 2018. So the 2018 election was not just that we are fighting against Najib, but it was about eventually convincing the people that there's still hope in Malaysia, and we must do this together. That togetherness is important because we must admit that on our side, we do not have media, we do not have anything more than, we do not have machinery, but it's important that it is the participation of ordinary people where they feel that eventually there is still hope in this nation and they must take part in this election.
Right. One of the things I think voters are looking for as well is a show of unity from the Pakatan Harapan coalition and its electoral partners, its allies. Now, there's been a lot of talk about working together with MUDA. Pakatan has, I think, a preliminary made that announcement that you are going to be cooperating with MUDA in this elections, and as well with PSM, if I'm not mistaken. How did you overcome that initial resistance that many, especially within PKR, had about collaborating with allies in G15?
I think in all elections that I got involved since 2008, essentially it is not about how many seats each of the party contests. It is about how many seats we win together. I have written a piece called look at the chessboard of politics. It's basically within the 165 seats in Peninsula. If we collectively, Pakatan and our friends if we only win 60 seats, which we are very likely to win. Pakatan is very likely to win 60 seats in Peninsula among 165. But if we only win 60 seats, we will be bypassed, we will be isolated. we must collectively try to win at least 80 parliamentary seats out of 165. It is doable. It is not impossible, because in 2008 and in 2013, the then opposition won 80 seats. But if we can win 100 seats, in the 2018 election, Pakatan won 98 seats. If we could win 100 seats in Peninsula, then we will form the government. We will be the biggest group, and most likely we will be able to form or to have the first right to form the government. So it is very important that all of us must be very clear. We are here to win, and to win together. There's no point if DAP alone wins. There's no point that we win and we contest as many seats as possible, but eventually we cannot win. So of course there are certain constituencies where we think that we have an advantage. We hope we can contest. Likewise, in other seats where we think that our allies may have advantages, they should contest that. So I think it should be that sort of conversation. The other point is that Malaysians are stuck in this idea of our political discourse is very stuck in this idea that who will be the prime ministerial candidate. Of course, prime ministerial candidate is very important. I have advocated recently that there should be debates, and there should be at least 2 sessions of debates for prime ministerial candidates among the top 3 coalitions, Pakatan, Perikatan, and Barisan Nasional. Their prime ministerial candidates should come forward to debate, and the TV station should host it, and there should be at least 2 sessions. But it is very important to remind everyone, our political system is a cabinet government. It is not a prime ministerial government. We have distorted our system for ages. We gave prime minister superpower. We gave prime minister all sorts of powers. But actually, we must build the cabinet government. And cabinet government means that actually the prime minister is just first among equals. And we must build a parliamentary democracy where we give power to parliament and not just to give all power to the prime minister. So from our side, I think it is important that to have unity is basically to acknowledge that we do need a prime ministerial candidate, but we also need to present a strong team. That means eventually when the voters make their choices, they are not just looking at one person. They are looking at the state of the team that we have. For example, Pakatan, easily we can showcase that we have at least 20 nationally known political figures who have been in politics for at least 10 to 15 years, and they are below 50 or just around 50 years old. We have a very strong cohort of below 50 politicians, and they are essentially they can actually form a very strong government. So for Pakatan to show that we are strong, we do have a strong team. We have a strong team of people who are sincere, but also they are in their middle age. They have a long runway to go, and collectively they have collaborated for years. I think these are the strengths that we must tell the public.
Right. Well, we are running out of time. I do want to ask a couple more questions. I hear you about looking at the whole as opposed to just the prime ministerial candidate. I want to talk about cooperation, and I think that's very important if you're going into this G15 with electoral pacts. Dr. Mahathir said that he's open to working with Anwar Ibrahim again. Is that a likely scenario? Might PH work with Mahathir again?
I don't think we are at that conversation because of all these challenges, but I don't think we need to attack each other. So my point is very simple. Even if we cannot officially work with each other because of bad blood and all this, we acknowledge that, but there's no point to attack each other. So I don't think I want to enter into that conversation.
Okay, that's fair. I do want to thank you so much for joining me on the show and sharing some of those insights. I think was important to hear. Thank you for your time. Liu Chin Tong, DAP National Election Director. A quick break here on Consider This. We'll be back with more in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
Ingin bersorak di perlawanan bola sepak terhebat? Kini anda boleh dengan 100 Plus. Jom bola dengan 100 Plus serta Ila sekarang.
Alami kehebatan dunia Unified TV dengan lebih 70 saluran premium dan 16 aplikasi penstreaman. Tonton dan nikmati rancangan kanak-kanak, liputan sukan, drama Korea dan filem terkini bila-bila masa di mana jua. Dapatkan Unify hari ini.
Memperkenalkan U Postpaid baharu. Nikmati data pantas sedia 5G, perantauan global percuma, peranti 5G dan dapatkan talian keluarga. Naik taraf ke U Postpaid baharu dari RM38 semula hanya dengan U Mobile.
Astro Rewards baru dah sampai. Hello. What? For me? Wow, semua ini hanya dengan Astro Rewards. Muat turun My Astro app sekarang.
What's the latest scoop when it comes to companies, markets, and strategies? For everything business and tech related, catch Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani, weekdays 10:30 p.m. across all AWANI platforms.
Hi, you're watching Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris. Let's continue our look at Pakatan Harapan's challenges and prospects going into GE15. Joining me on the show now, I have political scientist Professor Wong Chin Huat. He is the Deputy Head of Strategy for the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network Asia at Sunway University. Chin Huat, Penang has asked for the dissolution of its state legislative assembly to be concurrent with GE15. I believe PH leadership now, they're reviewing that decision at this very moment. I'm wondering, though, whether this was a misstep on the part of Pakatan Harapan to first announce that it wasn't going to call for dissolution of state assemblies, and then later to say, okay, well, we're going to consider this request from Penang, from one of the states that we control. Does it speak of disunity and a lack of consensus within the coalition?
It's not easy to find a common position, but I think the PH initial position is right for three reasons. First, that it has consistently opposed of having an election during the flood. There's no reason that why the state government should join in and have the state election. The people would expect the state government to focus all their energy and attention and resources on flood relief instead of having been distracted in electioneering and campaign. So that part is very clear. To go back now would only make PH look opportunistic and hypocritical in criticizing BN. And if Penang were to be hit by severe floods, and while other states like Kelantan or Terengganu keep themselves out of elections, Penang would get blamed. And the second reason is, regardless what time we are looking at, having a separate election from the national elections gives you the midterm effect. Elections held at different points of time capture the public mood at different points of time. Therefore, if the BN government, if BN were to win this GE15 now, 8 or 9 months down the road, when 6 other states are having their own state elections, it would likely be a worse time for BN because you may not be able to hold on the public goodwill for so long. And that's the reason why you see, if you look at America, the opposition party, the party that is not from the president's side, always has a good chance in the midterm election to do better than the last presidential election. The third point is that because our federal and state elections use the same electoral roll with the same divisions of polling district, you would be able to tell from the GE15 result that where your weakness points are, where your black areas are, for you to work on and improve your support. So on these three grounds, I think that PH should stick to its initial decision of not dissolving the state assemblies.
You don't think that the Penang government's request or their concerns that there's a possibility they might lose the state, there's a possibility that public funds will be wasted. You don't think those concerns hold water?
I find the Public Fund Act argument very funny. This would be federal money, and Penang alone would just contribute to at most perhaps 6% of the total additional funds you need to hold separate state elections. Since when Penang people are so nation-minded that they are willing to risk their own life and property loss just to save 6% of national expenses? And whether this would actually hurt the trend, I find it even more interesting if other states can actually wait for the electoral tide to turn around and to improve on their local support based on the parliamentary result. Why is it Penang so weak that it cannot benefit with a further run of time? I can't understand.
Okay, that's an interesting counter argument. I want to come back to a look at the Pakatan Harapan coalition at, say, the federal level. There's been, I feel an urgency over the lack of compelling narrative coming out from Pakatan Harapan. Particularly in terms of a future vision for the government. We just heard from Lee Chin Tong, election director, that he has a clear idea, but whether this message is being communicated or articulated to Pakatan Harapan sympathizers and supporters, is the narrative, in your opinion, Chin Huat, that PH is using the same narrative as 2018?
I think there is a danger that people get caught in the past to think that our electoral politics is still framed in the two coalition system. Therefore, you have people talking about Big Ten and so on as if everything is, people still think about anything but UMNO. Unfortunately, things have changed. We actually now have three national coalitions, which is more similar to the situations between 1978 and 1986. Where you have BN in the middle, you have PH on one end, and then with DAP and PAS at the other end. Today, DAP and PAS has evolved to be larger to become PH and PS. So we have that situation. What you need is a narrative that is not trapped in 2018. The problem with 2018, and I would say that part of this, a big part of the responsibility goes to not PH leaders, but PH supporters, is that they forgot that they were only 48% of the electorate. But there was not a majority that voted in for a new Malaysia if new Malaysia was the one defined by PH. If you are defining new Malaysia as one without UMNO, then it consisted of 48% of PH supporters and 17% of PAS supporters.
Okay, so I agree with you that maybe this is the mentality of Pakatan Harapan sympathizers, that it is a winner-take-all mentality for Pakatan Harapan. Win in GE15, win big. We just heard Lee Chin Tong say that 80 seats out of the 165 in Peninsula is what will be for them a desirable outcome to safeguard democracy. How do you see that? What is the best chance that Harapan might have in GE15, short of repeating what happened in 2018?
Well, aiming for 80 seats from the Peninsula is very realistic because that you concede that you're not going to win so much, and you're not expecting a huge add-on from East Malaysia. That means PH is prepare to share power at most as the leading senior partner of the next coalition government. And this is important because you have a lot of distrust among non-PH voters of letting PH to run the country on its own again. By acknowledging the fact that they would not have all the power, it would actually arrest the fear or anxiety of many people who would not trust BN, but neither they would go that far to give PH the full support. So I think it's important for PH to convince its supporter that it will share power with other parties. Say it explicitly. I know that people would complain and say, what's the point of voting in a watered-down reformist government? But if you believe in democracy, then democracy does not belong to only those people who agree with you. The people includes those who oppose you, and you have to live with them. It's only with that maturity that you can win more people, especially those on the fence, to support you.
Do you think that this is the election where we see Malaysia doing away with this two coalition system, that we now embrace a more mature democracy in having a coalition government of multi-ethnic politics with Malay Muslim nationalist parties?
Yes, we are moving that way. The main reason is that you have East Malaysian Party casting their own path, and here we have the Malay Muslim parties competing among themselves. But for these things to stabilize, we need the parties to have this conscious understanding that they need both product differentiation in elections to pull votes, and also allow some compatibility to form government with each other after elections.
I like the use of the word product differentiation. I don't think there's enough of that just yet in the different political parties and the ideologies they represent. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the show. That was political scientist Professor Wong Chin Huat, and that wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.